see the sound. Control of the sound. Where is it? Not, I don't know. I'm not good with I'm not good with the system.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare
It's like a
Rama,
mic here. The whole cable is wasted. Not the control of the sound here. I mean, I only know one control, but I don't know. Is that good? There's no control. You will see when you finish again, you will see the sound. That's why it's like that.
peux vous parler anglais? Est-ce que tu parles anglais? Merci. Okay, so thank you.
You can charge the mic number
Today
one.
we're reading the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita,
Battery is finished. You have to load it with USB.
which is it's the biography of our spiritual master Srila Prabhupada. It's the most extensive one we have. And so every Sunday we read a little bit of it and we try to extract some lessons from his life. To try and understand how we can develop qualities like Srila Prabhupada has. So we're going to read the chapter and try to get some context once I start reading. So there's a letter written by Srila Prabhupada to his disciples, and it says, "My dear Brahmananda, Hayagriva, Kirtanananda, Satsvarup, Gargamuni, Achyutananda and Jadurani, please accept my greetings and blessings of Guru, Gauranga, Giridhari Gandharika. You have already got the news of our safe arrival and good reception here by the devotees. Mr. Allen Ginsberg and about 50 or 60 others received us on the airport, and when I arrived in my apartment, there were some press reporters also who took note of my mission. 2-3 papers like the Examiner and the Chronicles have already published a report. One of the reports is sent herewith, please find. I wish that 1,000 copies of this report may be offset printed at once, and 100 copies of the same may be sent here as soon as possible. I understand that you are feeling my absence. Krishna will give you strength. Physical presence is immaterial. Presence of the transcendental sound received from the spiritual master should be the guidance of life. That will make our spiritual life successful. If you feel very strongly about my absence, you may place my pictures on my sitting places, and this will be source of inspiration for you. I am very much anxious to hear about the final decision of the house. I wish to open the house by the 1st of March 1967.
She's like a Christmas tree.
So I wish to open the house by the 1st of March 1967. An arrangement may be done dexterously in this connection. I have not as yet received the tapes for dictaphone, and I have sent you tapes yesterday. Please offer my blessings to Shriman Neil. Shriman Rayaram is cooking well and distributing prasadam for the devotees, numbering sometimes 70. It is very encouraging. I think this center will be very nice without delay. Everything is perspective. Hope you are well and awaiting your early reply." The letter had helped, especially the second paragraph. Brahmananda had posted it in the storefront. Now Swamiji Now Swamiji had clearly enunciated that they were still with him, and he was still in New York with them. It was something special, service to the spiritual master in separation. And even the devotees in San Francisco, who were with Swamiji every day, could not yet know its special taste. While the devotees in New York performed their daily duties, they often quoted from the letter and thought about it. Krishna will give you strength. Physical presence is immaterial. Presence of the transcendental sound received from the spiritual master should be the guidance of life. That will make our spiritual life successful. So in this letter, Srila Prabhupada brings out a really important point that he repeats again and again in his classes and in his books also. And it's this second paragraph here where he is explaining to his disciples that he understands they feel pain that he is not with them, but he's explaining that actually the physical presence is not the most important. The physical presence of the spiritual master is not the most important thing, but the instructions and the sound vibration that comes from the spiritual master are what really guides us in our spiritual life. And he even says something that seems rather strange. Physical presence is immaterial, but the physical presence for us is material. It's there, it's tangible. But actually, Srila Prabhupada is saying here that the physical is what is not tangible, and the sound and the instructions are what is really tangible, what is really significant. And he explains this a lot, the difference between Vani and Vapu. Vapu is the physical body and serving the spiritual master in person, and Vani is the instructions and serving the instructions of the spiritual master. And so we may feel that sometimes, well, if I'm serving directly the body of my spiritual master, if I'm in his presence, then surely that is better than serving some instruction far away. But actually, Srila Prabhupada always stresses that no, service to the instruction is more important, because that is the will of the spiritual master. We may want to be close to him, and we do get benefit from that, but actually the greater benefit is, well, am I pleasing him? Am I really doing what he wants me to do? And what he wants me to do, he tells in his instructions, and that may or may not be close to him. And Srila Prabhupada gives this example because some disciples were telling him that, Srila Prabhupada, we're so far away from you, we want to be close to you. And Srila Prabhupada gave this example that, when there may be a king and there is a little fly or mosquito sitting on his lap, so that insect is the closest to his physical body. But is he very pleasing that he's sitting on the lap like that? He's just causing a disturbance. It's better if he would go and do what he's supposed to do somewhere else instead of being there. So, and so for us it's important to understand this, because Srila Prabhupada is present now in his instructions, and also for many of us, our spiritual master also, we will not have very much personal, physical connection, but that we shouldn't be discouraged by that, either by not having met personally Srila Prabhupada when he was on the planet, or not having very much contact with our spiritual master who's present. But actually that should inspire us, and Prabhupada says here that Krishna will give you the strength. and actually we have to, he said in one purport of Bhagavad Gita, there's this verse, Vyavasayatmika buddhya itiha kurunandana bahushakahyanantasya vidayo vavishayanam. And so this verse means that one should have one point of determination in spiritual life. Not bahushaka means many branched, many different paths, but Vyavasayatmika buddhya means you only have one focus, and that is pleasing your spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport to that verse of Bhagavad Gita that actually one point of determination means to take the instructions of your spiritual master as your life and soul. So this is what it means to have determination, is to really hear those instructions and try to apply them in our life. And we see that Srila Prabhupada exemplified this by his life. Because he didn't have very much contact with his spiritual master, and he saw him a handful of times, but his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave him this instruction that you go preach Krishna consciousness in the West. And sometimes Srila Prabhupada was lamenting a little bit that, because he was a householder, and he was saying, everyone, all these brahmacharis and sannyasis living in your temples, Guru Maharaj, they're serving you so well, and I'm, you know, a grihasta, I have a business, I don't come very much. But Saraswati Maharaj would always tell him that, no, you stay in your position and you just remember this instruction, and then one day it will come out like that. So, and Srila Prabhupada just meditated on that, and he molded his whole life in such a way that he would be able to follow that instruction. And so, sometimes when we have a physical presence, we may take somebody for granted a little bit. And so that's actually a dangerous thing, to have a lot of close association with your spiritual master, because you start becoming familiar, or you can start becoming familiar. But when there is this distance, and there's this feeling of separation that the devotees here are expressing, the separation makes us more intense in our connection, and longing is stronger, and this feeling that I really want to hear, I want to feel close, and that has to come by my very attentive hearing of the holy names and praying. And we can see sometimes when there's somebody that we like or love, and we are with them, we think, yes, I'm, you know, happy to be with them, whatever they say is nice, and I'm happy to hear what they're saying, but there's a little bit of, you know, taking for granted. But when that person is away, the feeling of separation and the intensity and the longing for that relationship goes very deep inside the heart, and we sometimes can feel more connected in that separation, and more desirous to live in such a way that will be pleasing to that person, and we remember how much we love them or how much attachment we have to them. So we think, okay, in their absence, how can I, by my actions, remember them? How can I glorify them in actions? So this is one thing to consider about Srila Prabhupada and about our spiritual masters. Also that this physical distance can create a lot of closeness and intimacy inside. If anyone has any questions or anything, you can ask in the middle, because I'll go to different topics, so please don't hesitate.
This is exactly in this section. What year?
What year? It doesn't.
It's at least before March 1967, because he said he's hoping they can open that house by March 1967.
Yeah.
So basically, it's they will be open as Francis for them after.
Summer of love.
Although Prabhupada had written that they could place his photograph on his seat, no one had a photograph. They had to ask the devotees in San Francisco for one. A boy took some poor color snapshots and sent them to New York, and the devotees placed one on Prabhupada's sitting place in his apartment. It helped. For Prabhupada also, the letter to his disciples in New York marked a milestone. This was the basis on which he hoped to conduct a world movement. He could travel from place to place, and yet be simultaneously present in many places by his instruction. Brahmananda, as president of the New York temple, frequently phoned San Francisco. The chanting is the focal point, he told Hayagriva. We can always sit and chant. We're beginning to understand what Swamiji meant when he said that worship in separation is more relishable. And Srila Prabhupada wrote to his New York disciples regularly, at least once a week. Brahmananda got most of the business instructions, arranged to purchase a new building in New York, see Mr. Coleman and get copies of the Kirtan record, get a copy of the movie a filmmaker had made of the devotees, investigate the possibility of publishing Bhagavad Gita. If I'm assisted by one expert typewriter, Prabhupada wrote to Brahmananda, we can publish every 3 months a book. And the more we have books, the more we become respectable. A I just remembered another point in relation to when Prabhupada told the disciples to place a photograph of him on his seat, and the devotee said that that helps them to feel more connected to Srila Prabhupada. And so this is another aspect. We also have many photos, and probably a lot of us in our homes or rooms, we have some pictures of Guru, of Krishna, of the Goswamis, but actually what Srila Prabhupada is saying here, that you can place a photo of me on my seat, means for the spiritual master in Krishna there's no difference between the photograph and the person. And it's important to think about this and kind of be aware of it, because in our every material existence we have photographs and stuff, and we kind of don't really care for them very much, or we don't have this kind of understanding that it's non-different. It's a memory of something that happened, or a nice sunset, or whatever. And so we may continue with this same approach to any pictures, but actually the picture of Guru and Krishna is non-different from Guru and Krishna. And so we have to have this in mind when we're dealing with the pictures, and give them as much respect as we would the real person. Because again, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ye yata mam prapadyanti tam sataiva bhajamyaham, that according to how you approach me, I will reveal myself accordingly, I will reward you accordingly. And so if in the spiritual master, in these pictures of Krishna, we're relating or trying to relate or praying to as if the real person was there, then they can reveal themselves to that extent. But if we just deal with these pictures in a mundane way, then they will just stay mundane pictures, and we won't get anything out of it. So this respect and treating personally the pictures is also very important, because these are our anchor points. Like the Prabhupada says, if the spiritual master is not here, you have to establish a relationship on another platform, on an internal platform, and this internal platform comes by our efforts to establish that relationship. And so the pictures for us are very helpful, because it gives us some visual support and a focal point to concentrate our prayers on, and we can reveal our heart to the picture of our spiritual master and things like that. So yeah, just to bear in mind that these photographs are non-different, so they should be treated with respect. Sadhvarup got a letter from Prabhupada asking him to type the dictated tapes of the new book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Although Prabhupada's typist, Neil, had gone to San Francisco, after a day he had disappeared. I think you have 5 tapes with you, because I've got only 3 with me, wrote Prabhupada. See that the tapes do not miss. Sadhvarup had written, inquiring how he would be able to understand transcendental knowledge. You are a sincere devotee of the Lord, Prabhupada replied, and certainly he will bless you with auspicious advancement in the matter of spiritual understanding. Rai Ram got a letter encouraging him to continue publishing the magazine Back to Godhead. Back to Godhead will always remain the backbone of the society. Your ambition should always be how to improve the quality. Achyutananda, one of the youngest devotees, only 18, was now working alone in the kitchen. In a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote to 5 devotees, signing his name 5 times, he told Achyutananda, since Kirtanananda is absent, certainly you are feeling some strain, but the more you serve Krishna, the more you will become strong. I hope you are being properly assisted by your other godbrothers. Prabhupada advised Garga Muni, who was also 18, to cooperate with his other godbrothers. Asking whether Garga Muni had gone to see his mother, Prabhupada said he hoped she was all right. Since Gargamuni was the temple treasurer, Srila Prabhupada advised him, checks should be drawn with full deliberation. Prabhupada told Jadurani, I always remember you as the nicest girl because you are so devoutly engaged in the service of Krishna. She had informed him that she had been cheated by a boyfriend, and Srila Prabhupada replied, better you accept Krishna as your husband, and he will never be unfaithful. Devote yourself therefore 24 hours in the service of Krishna, and see how you feel happy in all respects. Rupanuga had written Prabhupada that the temperature in New York had dropped below zero, and that there had been a 2-day blizzard. Srila Prabhupada wrote, certainly this situation would have been a little troublesome for me, because I am an old man. I think Krishna wanted to protect me by shifting me here at San Francisco. Here the climate is certainly like India, and I am feeling comfortable, but uncomfortable also because at New York I felt at home on account of so many beloved students like you. As you are feeling my absence, so I am feeling for you, that we are all happy on account of Krishna consciousness either here or there. May Krishna join us always in his transcendental service. The neophyte disciples in New York felt assurance from their spiritual master's words and by their own experience. Service in separation was a transcendental fact. They were improving on chanting on their beads, and the New York Center was going on. So long our kirtan is all right, Prabhupada wrote. There is no difficulty at all. But there was one difficulty. Attempts to purchase a new building, which had gone on smoothly while Prabhupada had been present, had become a great problem as soon as he had left. Shortly after Srila Prabhupada's departure for San Francisco, Brahmananda had given Mr. Price $1,000, and Mr. Price had promised to help the devotees get their building. When Prabhupada heard this, he became perturbed. In the opinion of the devotees and the trustees here, $1,000 has been risked without any understanding. I know that you are doing your best, but still there has been an error of judgment. I am not at all displeased with you, but they say that Mr. Price will never be able to secure financial help from any other source. He is simply taking time under different pretexts, changing constantly. Therefore, you should not pay even a farthing more than what you have paid. If you want any more money, you should flatly refuse. Srila Prabhupada remembered Mr. Price in their first meeting, at which the blonde-haired, elegantly dressed businessman, his face tanned even in winter, had addressed him as Your Excellency. That address alone had made Prabhupada distrustful. There was a Bengali saying, too much devotion denotes thief. Prabhupada knew that businessmen were prone to cheat, and that an American businessman would be particularly difficult to deal with. Prabhupada's American disciples were innocent children in worldly affairs. He was ready to instruct them step by step, but now, without consulting him, they had become involved in an unbusinesslike transaction, risking $1,000 of the society's money without any given agreement. Srila Prabhupada had visited the building, and he wanted it. It was a historical, well-kept, aristocratic building, suitable for his New York headquarters. It was worth $100,000 if they could afford it. But it was difficult for Prabhupada to know from San Francisco what was going on between Brahmananda and businessmen. And the difficulty increased as letters and phone calls from Brahmananda introduced other persons involved. Aside from Mr. Price, there was Mr. Tyler, the owner, and Mr. Tyler's lawyer, who seemed independent of Mr. Tyler, and finally there was ISKCON's lawyer, who had also a mind of his own. Although Srila Prabhupada's disciples usually surrendered to his direction, they seemed bent on listening to the businessman's promises, even though their spiritual master had cautioned them not to. Prabhupada became disturbed. His preaching in San Francisco was being threatened by fears that the businessman would cheat his society of what he had begun in New York. So here we have a situation where Srila Prabhupada wants to acquire a building, but he has gone somewhere else, so his devotees have to continue the transaction and try to negotiate with the businessman, and there are apparently many different parties involved, and everyone has their own propaganda, it seems, from what it says here, that everyone has a mind of their own, and the lawyer is independent from the person who's employed him, and they all have their own agenda, and they're all trying to influence the devotees to do a certain thing, to get money for this, or no, you have to pay for that, and there's a lot more intricacy that will go through in the rest of the chapter. And Srila Prabhupada is saying something else, and he also has a strong opinion on how things should be done, because Prabhupada is not only, he's very experienced also in mundane dealings like this. And it just makes me think of something I heard in a class about how materialistic association can divert our attention from the instructions of the spiritual master. And there's several examples like this in the scriptures. But one of them is what's the name? In the Ramayana. What's the name of the mother who was influenced by mantra? Tada? Kaikeyi. Yeah, so Kaikeyi was a very, very devoted servant of Ram. She was not his mother directly, but the mother of his brother. And she was very devoted to him, and all her life was for him, and she was very happy when he was going to be coronated as the king. But then Mantra, who had some personal motivation in there, and she was not so devoted, she talked to Kaikeyi, and she changed her mind, and she poisoned her with kind of materialistic propaganda and selfish ideas. And because Kaikeyi listened to her with trust and with an open heart, she was polluted, and then she made a decision that went against Lord Ram, just because she had become infected by the poison of materialist propaganda. And there's other examples like in like Kamsa and Duryodhana. Dhritarashtra also is another good example. Dhritarashtra had somewhat devotional understanding of things, but he was very much attached to his son Duryodhana, and he was very influenced by everything that Duryodhana would say to him, and Duryodhana was a very envious person, and he was always influencing his father to make bad decisions that were going against Krishna, against the Pandavas, and against Dharma. But because Dhritarashtra was listening openly like this, and he would even though he knew what was the right thing to do, and Vidura, his brother, kept telling him, reminding him what the proper thing to do was, he couldn't listen to that because he was listening to other influences. And so here, this is a kind of a small example of this, but you see, the Prabhupada is giving clear direction of how he thinks the matter should be dealt with, but the disciples are wondering if maybe they should listen to the businessman, or they seem to trust what this Mr. Price is saying, and so here they made a mistake because they became distracted, diverted by a materialistic person away from the Lord as their spiritual master. And so there's a lot of warning in the scriptures about taking bad association, materialistic association, that can take many forms. It can be very gross and very obvious, or it can be more subtle in the form of just criticism of devotees, criticism of Krishna, criticism of Guru. or just talking about mundane topics or giving some advice that doesn't come from a spiritually sound place, it can very easily distract us because our mind, if we listen to this, we can take these ideas into our head and we can be distracted. So we have to be very careful what we listen to and who we listen to, and always, compare and stay fixed on what our spiritual master says, or those who are guiding us say, and not just pick up random information from anywhere and everywhere because we must feel very vulnerable to these external influences and feel that our devotion and our faith are very fragile, so we should be careful what we subject them to. And so many people may give so much advice, but we have to be careful where it's coming from. Is this person spiritually solid? What do they talk about? What are they doing? Are they practicing devotional service? So even though it may seem like good advice, we should be careful before taking it and before even applying it. Especially if our spiritual master or the instructions of the Shastra or our seniors specifically say the opposite, like in this case. Okay, so with no responsible advisors to turn to, Srila Prabhupada sometimes discussed the problem with Mukunda and other devotees in his room. They all agreed that the transaction seemed highly irregular. Brahmananda was probably being led on by false promises. Brahmananda, however, saw Mr. Price as a rare person, a successful man who wanted to help the devotees. Although no other respectable businessman had ever shown interest, Mr. Price listened and sympathized, and he would greet the devotees with Hare Krishna. Brahmananda was well aware of the humble economic and social position of the devotees. They were almost all ex-hippies and they were poor. But here was Mr. Price, a wealthy man with diamond cufflinks, who was always glad to see him, shake his hand, pat his back, and speak appreciatively of the religion of India and the moral behavior of the small band of devotees. Mr. Price had received a group of devotees as guests in his apartment and said nice things about each one of them. He had said that Hayagriva was an excellent writer, and that Back to Godhead was the best magazine on the market, and that its mimeographed appearance made it look even better than the slicks. He said he would give the devotees a movie projector, and he came close to saying that if he could liquidate some of his money, he would give them the building. Brahmananda, who saw Mr. Price a few times a week, would come away intoxicated with high hopes. The Krishna consciousness movement could rise to success through his wealthy man's patronage. After leaving Mr. Price's office, Brahmananda would rejoin the devotees in the evening and tell them what had happened. On nights where there were no public kirtans, the devotees would hold meetings. Swamiji had named them Ishta Goshtis to discuss the instructions of the spiritual master. And the Ishta Goshtis became dominated by talks of Mr. Price and the building. One night, Brahmananda explained why he had given Mr. Price $1,000. Mr. Price had asked for something to work with. It was like earnest money, and it was also for a trip Mr. Price had to take to Pittsburgh to see whether he could release some of his wealth to use in Krishna's service. One of the boys asked whether there would be any receipt or written agreement. Swamiji had taught them to use receipts, at least amongst themselves. Gargamuni and Satsvarup, a treasurer and secretary, signed each voucher, and Gargamuni kept the vouchers on file. These included requests for items like 50 cents for a hat, $3 for sneakers. Brahmananda said he had mentioned a written statement to Mr. Price but hadn't pressed the matter. Anyway, it wasn't necessary or even desirable, since they were not simply conducting business with Mr. Price, but cultivating a relationship. Mr. Price was a well-wisher, a friend, who was helping them as charity. He was going to do big things and use his influence to get the building. This $1,000 was just a gesture to show their interest and to show Mr. Price's friends, the devotees. This $1,000 was just a gesture to show their interest and to show Mr. Price's friends the devotees weren't joking. They had some money. So here there's this story of Ramananda giving $1,000 to Mr. Price for just because he feels very, as they say, intoxicated with high hopes after speaking with Mr. Price. And Mr. Price just asked for something to work with, and there were so many promises behind. And this can be kind of an illustration of how the material energy works on us as well. Mr. Price can be seen as an agent of Maya. Like, I'm not saying he is, but he just as a metaphor that the material energy is very expert at attracting us and alluring us and promising us so many things. And so far in our journey in this material world, we have believed and chased after all the promises that she has been making. She's promising, happiness, fulfillment, excitement, joy, love, so many things, that if you just do this, if you just get that, if you just give me this, just give me a little bit of time, a little bit of money, a little bit of effort, I'll give you so much, but you just need to give me a little bit first. But then, as we will see here, then we say, so you told me I would get something, I haven't got it, I'm more entangled in this deal with you, I've lost so much money, I don't really know if I'm going to get what I want. And then she's like, yeah, don't worry, I'm just working on it, just need to make this little adjustment, just need to take this trip to Pittsburgh to see if I can get more for you. And we kind of buy into this thing because we want this happiness, we want this satisfaction. And this is apparently our only hope when we don't have higher knowledge. But now we have this higher knowledge, and actually the Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Acharyas, they're promising us so much more than what Maya is promising. But we don't have as much experience of that yet. We haven't had so much taste of this spiritual bliss. And so even though we hear about it, when it comes to decisions sometimes it's not so easy, because one is quite theoretical, the other one we know that, okay, that's not very good, but at least I know what I'm getting when I buy that one. So sometimes we have this difficulty of making the choice. And that's where the element of faith comes in, that we have to trust the devotees that are telling us this. We can look at the devotees who have followed the practice of devotional service and how they have been transformed and how they're experiencing something based on different qualities that we can observe. And it can help us to make these decisions that between this somewhat theoretical spiritual happiness and this seemingly more tangible but illusory material happiness. So this is our struggle actually in a lot of our spiritual life, is making this choice at every step. It's like, am I going to choose the material immediate satisfaction now, or am I willing to invest for a further benefit in my spiritual life? And this is our austerity and sacrifice, in a sense, that we have to be able to make those decisions. And the more we make the right decisions, the easier it will become to make that decision. And every time, Maya will not let us go, even if we're practicing spiritual life. Actually, quite the opposite. As soon as we start going against her, she's going to try and get us back by promising us things and asking for a little payment. And there's she explains she doesn't often ask for very much at the beginning. Just give me a little bit of your time. Just let me just this one thing, or just this, then I'll leave you alone for your devotional service. And our mind says so many things like this. So, yeah, just watch this last film. Just do this last thing, this last exchange that I'm not supposed to be having with this person. Da da da. And you think, oh well, it's just a moment. It's just one thing. It's just once. But this is how she catches us, because then she's like, aha, okay, now I've got you. One more, just one more, just one more, just one more. And our whole life is composed of these decisions and these one moments, actually. And so we have to understand the danger of even once, giving in to something we know we shouldn't be doing. So we have to be careful for these false promises, and that's why it's so important to read the Srila Prabhupada's book so carefully, because especially in the Bhagavatam, well, Srila Prabhupada in the purport and the verses themselves, they warn us against all these things, how Maya is going to come and get us. And if we've read properly and we've read the purports and we kind of understand, we're armed with the knowledge, and we are better equipped to see how the material energy is acting upon us, and so we are better able to defend ourselves, which means to ask Krishna to defend us. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Does anyone have any questions or comments or corrections? Something to say?
I thought about the funny story
Yeah.
in comparison to this picture talk. This picture talk about having a picture.
Mm-hmm.
He knows it better than me. There was some devotee in Denmark who had a picture of the spiritual master.
Mm-hmm.
And he told the other devotees that the picture is telling me this. The picture is telling me to marry someone
Mm-hmm.
and become the teacher. It was convinced the picture was saying. Then the spiritual master actually came and he said, I've never said that.
Mm-hmm.
But he kept on insisting, but your picture is telling me so.
He was telling his spiritual master that your picture is telling you.
Yeah. So it's a little bit far out, but it shows that the person is more important than the picture.
Right, okay.
Funny stuff.
Yeah, you have to be careful with the instructions coming
He was
from
a little
pictures and
crazy.
He
dreams.
was
And
kind of crazy. But I think we should, the conclusion is we should always be, if the spiritual master is not there, we should always be under someone else.
yeah.
Someone else's authority to some point. That's my understanding. It's not that the spiritual master is not there, and then, okay, you follow his instructions, but you also follow some local authority.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
also kind of Islamic culture too. Not just a picture.
Yeah, it's not just a picture. Then we can make up whatever we like with the picture. Thank you for that addition.
Actually, spiritual master, put your on yourself. Designate somebody to take care of this side from himself. But I don't know if any of you know your great John. He's originally from Philadelphia, in Sweden, joined in Sweden. Anyway, he was here when Prabhupada came here in 76, Prabhupada's last visit. And he told me that one thing that stuck in his mind from that visit was that there was one boy who came here, Prabhupada was here, but he was a very freelancer, you could say, quite independent. He'd been following Prabhupada, so he knew Prabhupada knew him. So he was asking, Prabhupada was asking the local authorities here, this place, who is this boy, who is his authority, what is he doing? He's just roaming around. Prabhupada was not happy about that.
Mm.
So Lilamrita told me that was when he realized, because he said, I also had the same tendency,
Mm.
but he realized that that's not, Prabhupada didn't like that.
Mm.
Yeah, any problem. You had to be, so, within the structure that Prabhupada set up, all of this is going to society.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Where are you from in Texas?
San Antonio.
This is more close to Mexico.
It's right in the heart of Texas.
Does it have Spanish name?
Yeah.
Speak Spanish?
A little bit. Un poco.
Where's that Texas draw?
Yeah, I'm from the city, so from the suburbs. As soon as you go out of the circumference of San Antonio, immediately you start hearing it. And people, insights into it so much.
I heard a story about devotees doing Sankirtan in Texas or some southern city. They stopped, one police officer stopped the bus.
They stopped it.
The police stopped the bus and he just started heading. And they were all shaved off brahmacharis and it was really far out for him. So he said,
This short restaurant.
yeah, he lives in some rural place. And he said to them, you know what I want to do? I want to do you all a favor. I want to take you all in. And he just arrested the people. Just like this, they were far out.
So he did. I'll do you a favor.
You don't have this.
Sorry to be this way,
He's pretty good at imitating.
Yeah,
Probably the first and only time I'll hear a Danish man imitate a
It
Texas.
reminds me about Easy Rider. You know, this movie, Easy Rider. They were out, they were heading down to